So I've been asked many a time if I'd make any videos related to gospel-related questions and kind of what we're seeing in the church with straying away from the actual gospel and moving into either man-centered gospel or one that's leaves out most of what makes the gospel the gospel. And there's some major components to go along with this, but ultimately what we see in the church is a gospel that says that there's a void in the heart that needs to be filled, or one that is centered around earning the right to share the gospel. The only problem with that is you never actually know when you earn the right with somebody. You could spend a week, month, years trying to earn the right to share with someone. But the problem with that is it's kind of works-based. It's basing the gospel on what we can do versus what God says he's done. Ultimately, our job is to not earn the right to share the gospel with somebody. It's to see enough urgency with the message that we move forward with it near immediately, actually. So it's not about earning the right, it's about just opening our mouths. The Bible says, beautiful are the feet of those that bring good news. And to bring the good news, we have to be willing to step outside of our comfort zone and move forward with it. And it's just as simple as opening our mouths. It says share the gospel with every living creature. So if we see another human being that's living and breathing, we should take that opportunity and make the most of every opportunity with that non-believer. So all it is really is learning and preparing, a method that can be used. It said be prepared. The Bible talks about being prepared to give an answer for your faith. And, a lot of what that looks like is practicing, studying up, learning how to answer the questions and concerns of the non-believer. And I do believe that Ray Comfort does a very good job with this over at Living Waters. He's been an evangelist for 40 years, and his method is by far the best that I've ever seen. My wife and I had spent a lot of years going to church and inviting friends. The problem with that was we'd have so many people come, and we'd get, praised at church for bringing so many people, but they never stuck because the church, by and large, is meant for the believer to come and be equipped. The Bible talks about how God gave some saints, apostles, teachers, and preachers to equip the saints to go out into the world and do the things that involve sharing the gospel and praying for people and reaching out. So by and large, the church, like I said, is meant for the believer. So having a non-believer go to church is fine, but at the end of the day, it's ultimately not the church's job in that building that we erroneously call the church for them to get them saved. Salvation belongs to the Lord, but we are supposed to go out and share that gospel message. So if we think of the church as an equipping grounds, then we should be going in there and sparring with one another, fellowshipping with one another, as iron sharpens iron, like Proverbs talks about. For that to happen, though, iron has to strike. If we're going to take on the full armor of God and be equipped with, the shield, the sword, the helmet, and the rest of it, and then we do need to practice actually using it, right? Because those are all battle pieces. And if we're going to think that we're going to go into battle, just because we're wearing the equipment and be successful, I think we're wrong. So there's got to be a willingness to be able to practice, to strike one another, in a controlled environment. Because when we go out with this message into the world, likely they won't be receptive. And if we're not prepared for battle, in a sense, then I think we are going to be very unsuccessful in our tries. So there's a lot to it, but ultimately, as Ray Comfort lays out, you got to start. You can start in the intellectual, but then you swing to the conscience, and then you just kind of lead and guide the conversation all the way through. And I've done it a few times, and that works better than anything else I've ever tried. I tried the void in the heart, where we basically just say that God is better than sex, money, drugs, and that doesn't work. It really doesn't. I've tried sharing my testimony. Sharing my testimony is great with believers, but with a non-believer, they just end up saying, well, that's your experience. We're happy for you. But where I've done what Ray Comfort teaches, it's been great. It's been wonderful, actually. I went from debating people for a half hour to a couple hours, trying to debate the Bible, different ideas, to being able to concisely answer questions and concerns, but then getting to the gospel using the Socratic method and just asking them questions, and then going from do they think they're a good person, then going through the law, the Ten Commandments, to bring about the knowledge of sin and to strike the conscience. and then moving then from that to heaven and hell, and then moving to what Christ did so that we can be redeemed and saved. And so it doesn't involve a prayer for salvation at that point. We're just going out and delivering the good news, the gospel, which only makes sense in the light of the law and in the light of what our consequences of wages are, which is death ultimately. The wages of sin is death. So laying it out and explaining it that way, it's more concise. They get the point, and it gives them something that they can then go away with and really think over. It doesn't, you're not trying to appeal to them in any other way. You're not trying to say that God's better than something. You're just giving the straight gospel message, and then they go and evaluate it for themselves. And I haven't been slapped across the face for doing this. No bad consequences. People tend to be genuinely interested. And it's been great. So giving out gospel tracts is another way to do it, and taking the opportunity to do that's better than nothing. So I would say I would encourage you all to start there, to really check out Living Waters and to move in that direction, because sitting and doing nothing or trying to earn the right, like I said, that's subjective. It's relative to who you are. And I would even argue that once you become friends with somebody, now you're more concerned about losing the relationship if you open your mouth for God. So I would encourage you to not waste any time. Don't waste their time. Don't waste your own time. If you want to share the gospel with somebody, do it and get it done. Because Ray says it all the time, 150,000 people die each day. So it could be any one of us. We're not promised tomorrow. So we would hate to see somebody that we come into contact with die and go to hell because we didn't open our mouths. So get out there, open your mouth, and share the gospel.